So what did you guys think when you first heard that Disney had bought Star Wars and there was going to be another trilogy of Star Wars films?
I remember where I was specifically. I was at work and I was looking at the computer, and I think I saw it was on some mainstream news website. There's just a little blurb: Disney buys Star Wars Episode 7. I mean, it was in both. They were both in the headline, and I looked into it and I was reading about it, and it just blew my mind. I mean, I kind of was on the side of there probably will be more Star Wars movies someday, but seeing that really blew my mind. I remember I was texting all my friends, and I'm sure you guys were among them.
Yeah.
But
and you were happy.
I was really happy at first, but I will admit that most of what I was thinking about at first was not what the movies were going to be like, but what the experience was going to be like, what the next 3 years was going to be like. Or I didn't know what the time frame was at the time. Now 3 years later, but I remember thinking about how fun it was going to be to talk about it and discuss it with friends.
That's exactly where I was too. It was nice to know that we were getting some more movies, but I just liked thinking about all of the times I was going to have with you guys and the rest of our friends with all this coming together. And I know you were on the other side of it.
I'm a curmudgeon. Yeah, I was not happy. I wasn't pleased. I haven't in the past traditionally been a big Disney person, so the Disney name didn't do anything for me. I hadn't really acclimated myself to the idea that George Lucas was going to step away from Star Wars. I probably knew, he'd been talking about it, but I wasn't happy about, hey, Star Wars is no longer going to be George Lucas helmed. Mm-hmm. That didn't make me happy.
Well, let's not forget about the fact that he said Star Wars is done. That was the story.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, being a teenager and really getting into Star Wars a lot in the mid-90s, that's when George Lucas's rhetoric really started to focus on this idea that Star Wars and the Star Wars saga is the story of Anakin Skywalker. And so my initial reaction was, you know what? I don't want to see Star Wars movies that George Lucas is not going to write and direct, and why there's no reason to make these movies. The story is done. And all it's going to do is dilute the power of that 6-part tragedy, and I guess it's not really a tragedy so much because, but that 6-part story. I've completely changed my mind at this point, but that's how I reacted initially. I was negative, and so my whole outlook on it has evolved quite a bit since then.
Well, for me, that was the moment when I don't want to say got back into Star Wars because I never really stopped being into Star Wars, but that was the moment when I started listening to Star Wars podcasts. Mm-hmm. That was the moment when I started reading more seriously Star Wars novels again and looking at Star Wars news websites literally every day instead of maybe once a month.
Right.
And so for me, the payoff was almost immediate. I was back in that universe. I was invested in it. I was listening to all the rumors as they came throughout the months and months that followed that, and years, and still am. So sort of the payoff from what I was excited about really happened right away.
Right.
And now that we're here and we are, just what,
2 months away.
2 months away from watching the movie.
Yeah.
I think that so far it's been a really great experience. And I could walk out of that theater and be unhappy about a number of things, maybe. We don't know. But I've already had a lot more fun being involved in Star Wars. We've already gotten Rebels, which was an amazing show. Some of the novels, Aftermath, Lost Stars, I thought were really fantastic. And I don't think that that any of that would have been. I guess I would have watched Rebels, but I don't think I would have picked up my novel reading as religiously as if there wasn't new movies coming out.
I think I probably would have picked up Rebels, but I was never really that interested in Clone Wars. I thought it was okay, and I kind of watched some of it, but once Force Awakens was announced, I went through and watched all that with my son, really enjoyed it all. Rebels is obviously fantastic on its own anyway. Mm-hmm. But yeah, kind of same sentiment as you. It just really kickstarted everything for me again. I never used to look at Force.net or any of those sites, and I found myself there pretty consistently again.
Yeah.
And to me, I always made the delineation right away that, okay, there's going to be more movies out, and there's probably going to be a lot more movies out now because it's Disney, but I'll just always hold these other 6. This was kind of before they announced we're going to have episodic movies versus the saga movie, the non-saga movies. And I just kind of figured, well, they'll be what they are, and I'm not really going to necessarily hold them with the other 6, so I can make that differentiation for myself.
I just think no
between
matter
them.
how I feel about some of these, there are going to be so many Star Wars movies. Some of them I'm going to love. Probably some of them I'm going to like less. Some of them I might not like at all. We don't know.
Right.
But the whole experience overall is going to be fun, and I'm really excited about having more Star Wars.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was an evolution in terms of they started to win my trust over piece by piece, bit by bit, sort of like you guys are saying with, watching Rebels and learning more about what the choices they were making. And then just, you started to hear different things. You started to hear that J.J. Abrams was involved, and then Lawrence Kasdan. That was a huge thing for me to hear that Lawrence Kasdan was involved.
Don't forget the original actors.
Yeah, of course, the original actors. Yep. And then you start to see photos and then video and just, so far everything has, all the information that's come out, all the conversations, all the evidence has built a lot of trust for me, and I'm just really excited about it. So I think that, it was something where initially I just was so not uninterested, but I was just so nervous and so worried. And now I'm at a place where it would take a lot to sort of, for me to lose that trust again. I have so much trust in the movie and the idea that it's going to be really good. So.
Yeah, I mean, JJ stressed and still is so much, about everything being real, being on set, on site, and all that. And you just see how involved Kathleen is in everything still, too. It really just instills that sense of knowing that things are in good hands and are going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the JJ announcement was an interesting one, too, because he was not the person that I wanted them to choose.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with how I feel about his movies. I actually really like. I liked the Star Trek, the first Star Trek movie a lot. The second was fun. I really liked Super 8, and I like a lot of the other things that I've seen of him. But when I first heard that they were, making the movie, of course the list of directors, was sort of growing by the day that they're possibly going to choose him.
Right.
I think in all of our minds we were like, well, J.J. Abrams is the Star Trek reboot guy. There's no way they're going to choose him. It just our minds were had so closely connected J.J. with Star Trek at that point. I didn't think it was even possible that they would choose him.
Right.
So when they did, I was a little shocked, and I didn't. And I think for some reason I was thinking, well, okay, is this going to be similar to Star Trek, or what does that mean? And I felt I don't want to say apprehensive because I didn't like him, but just because of the Star Trek thing, it didn't seem right. It didn't feel right. I thought they were going to choose somebody who. This was going to be the Star Wars guy, and this was going to be the guru for Star Wars for the entire trilogy, and I'm happy with the JJ involvement now, because after hearing him talk about it so much, it's clear that
yeah, definitely.
His mind is in the right place, and he has a lot of passion, and he's putting everything he has into it.
Yeah, I really like J.J. Abrams. I still haven't actually seen those Star Trek movies, which I need to, because obviously those are good homework for preparing for The Force Awakens. Just to see a film that has a lot of similarities to Star Wars and The Force Awakens, a lot of differences also too. But I've been a fan of him since way back with Felicity. I'm like one of those people that really like that show, and so and I love Super 8, and I've liked a lot of his work, and he just seems like the kind of guy that's a good fit for Star Wars. So I'm excited in that regard. I've actually had to deal with or had to kind of come to terms with the idea that he's not going to be doing all three.
Yeah.
And I think it's just we're so used to George. Just being sort of having the control over everything, and it being one person's vision. And actually, back when the sequel trilogy was announced, that was part of my argument was, hey, Star Wars is George Lucas's vision. It's his story. It's his story to tell. And I don't want somebody else to come in and do a cover band of Star Wars. I want it to be the real thing. And but there's so many great Star Wars stories out there, and there's been so much good work done in the Star Wars universe since George has stepped away. Rebels being the best example of it's so Star Wars. I mean, it feels so Star Wars, not just in visual, not just in pacing, not just in editing, but it has the same heart of Star Wars, and so I think that it can be done. And I think in some cases, maybe new voices and new directors and new people in control, maybe they can, in some ways, sort of find that original heart of Star Wars, maybe even more than George could towards the end of his career.
That's what I was going to say. We'd rather have people who love Star Wars and who understand Star Wars rather than George, whose heart really isn't in it anymore. If he's ready to focus on other things in his life, why would he want him to do more if he wasn't in that place in his life and really passionate about it?
Well, I'm interested to see how it'll play out, a couple years down the road here too, because Dave Filoni really is a big part of it right now for me with the Rebel stuff. But he was like Lucas's understudy for the last however many years.
Close to a decade.
So,
Yeah.
So it's almost like an extension of Lucas in my mind.
Right.
So I'm really interested to see how kind of the 7, or not 7, but 8 and 9 are going to play out and things beyond that.
Right.
Now, it seems like they've done a really good job putting this kind of story team together and keeping things cohesive in that way. But
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see how it goes the farther we get away from Lucas being gone.
Well, and that's something that I'm kind of excited about too, is the story group in the terms of, when I say that I want, Star Wars is George Lucas's vision, I want it to be pure, and I don't want somebody else to come in and do a knockoff version of Star Wars. Yeah. You start to think, my opinion of what The Force Awakens has evolved, it's changed. And I think what Star Wars is can evolve and change and is evolving and it is changing. And maybe in some ways it's a good thing if going forward, Star Wars is not one man's vision and it's not tied only to one person. He created those foundational works, but going forward, if there's a core team of people that are dedicated, that are collaborative, and that are going to be stewards of the Star Wars saga, and it's not just one person, so if that person, decides to leave or go somewhere else, we have to start over. But you have a core group of people who really get it, and they shape it, and they collaborate, and then it's not so tied to one person. Maybe that's a good thing for Star Wars.
Absolutely. And I think we talked about it, and I think George actually talks about it since the sale too, where he wanted to hand it off to some entity or people that he knew was going to be able to take care of it. And Disney obviously has that cachet, taking care of franchises for a long period of time, not seeing them run into the ground, that type of...
Oh, and Kathleen Kennedy obviously knows the movie business, the blockbuster business very well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I think that reminds me too that there's this narrative around, I think, with people that maybe know a little less than the super fans of Star Wars that just talk about Disney a lot, like, well, Disney's going to mess it up, or Disney's going to do this, or Disney does own Star Wars, but there is still Lucasfilm exists.
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot people are working on this movie. There's a story group. There are people who worked on the original trilogy involved. The original actors are having a lot of input, I'm sure. So the fact that Disney owns Star Wars doesn't mean that there's like one person working at Disney making all these decisions.
Yeah. It seems like the same thing they did with Marvel. I mean, they purchased Marvel and they brought it in, but I can't imagine that it's just Disney employees doing the Marvel stuff. Marvel's still got the whole other side of their business with the comic books, and it does not seem to me that Disney is in there running the comic book business.
Right.
Aside from the financial side.
Well, the people making Star Wars right now, as I kind of said earlier, are people who understand and love Star Wars very much and who grew up with it. And a lot of the people around our age, so it'll be interesting to see what their vision for the future of Star Wars is.